Welcome to Strength, Love, and Healing with Authors Alcove. I am your host, Angie Wolf. Today I have author, speaker, and coach Duncan Bhaskaran Brown. He wrote the books Real Men Quit, which came out in December 2023, and Get Over Indulgence. After 20 years of addiction, Duncan has found sobriety and now works to help others achieve their dreams as he has. Today we will discuss his books, his journey to sobriety, and his coaching services, which you can find on his website, bhaskaranbrown.com. Welcome and thank you, Duncan.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to having a bit of a chat.
Do you mind just sharing just a little bit about yourself and what found yourself to writing and publishing these books? You actually have 3 books. I just named 2 though, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you believe Amazon, I've got 4 because there's this ebook I put up on there ages and ages ago that just won't die. So yeah, but the first 2 are about local government anyway. They're not very interesting. We'll talk about the good ones. So yeah, the funny thing is when I normally talk about like how I got started in the world, I normally start talking about alcohol. So it's quite nice to actually talk about something nice like writing, you know. So the thing that always stands out for me was when I was a kid, I got this crazy idea that it would be a great thing to start a newspaper. So I did. I recruited Bill. He was really into science, so he was the science writer, and Natasha was really into fashion, so she did fashion. And Richard, he did sport, and I was quite into music, so I did music. I mean, quite why I thought anybody was interested in a kind of mashup of science, music, fashion, and sport, I don't know. But you work with what you've got, don't you? So we knocked it up. We photocopied it on this like huge old school photocopier, and then we just ran around church on a Sunday morning. I'm trying to sell the Sunday rag for 10 pence, and that was my introduction to the cold hard reality of being a writer. But it taught me a lot of like really important things, you know. I mean, it taught me that if you really want to be successful as a writer, it's about the people that you work with, it's about the team that you build, and ultimately if you really want to get people to buy your books, you have to run around church on a Sunday morning, metaphorically speaking, and actually force it into their hands.
So you kind of always saw yourself as a writer. This was not something that you just kind of fell into after your sobriety.
No, not really. I mean, it's funny because I know a lot of coaches and I know a lot of speakers and I know a lot of trainers, not just in the sobriety world, but in general. And they all kind of write a book. And I'm like, okay, great, write a book. It's bloody hard work, though. Me, like, I've been doing it my whole life. You know, the earliest kind of successes that I had, they tend to revolve around writing. I did a lot of drama when I was younger. You might come across them a bit of a show off. So I did enjoy acting, but you know, I found that it was actually more satisfying to be behind the camera, to be working on the production side of things, and particularly I got into writing that way. So I spent my 20s writing really, really bad film scripts that never saw the light of day, but I've been writing in earnest the whole of my life.
So do you think you'll ever go back to trying to screenwrite or to write a fiction novel, maybe?
Well, I really want to do like a big expose documentary about how the media is telling us lies about alcohol, which is a really fantastic idea, except you know how are you ever going to broadcast anything trashing the media? It's like it's not a great idea, is it? So yeah, I one day I will get back into writing fiction, whether that's novels or whether that's film scripts. I don't know, but yeah, it it's something that bubbles at the back of my mind that I can never really get out of it, but I don't kind of at the moment have the time to dedicate to it, unfortunately.
I know my husband and I, we actually often read and watch things that are trashing the media. So you know what? I know that you have an audience. There's definitely a lot of us out there that want to watch it. It was just a matter of how do we find them. But so did you end up self-publishing these or did you do a traditional publishing?
Well, I like to think I traditionally self-published. So yes, I did self-publish them, but I did it properly, you know. For Real Men Quit, like I said, you know, I built a team around me. I've got a great development editor called Tommy. We worked very hard on, you know, crafting a nice line through it, making sure it all kind of like fit together nicely. Amazing line editor who actually makes my stuff sound like, you know, English. It's really great. And then of course the proofreader who just, like, I love him and everything, but he's got his ease. I mean, it's like, that's what proofreading is. It's like a problem, I think. And then, you know, on the design side, worked with Tanya. She's done the covers for the last couple of books, and Graziella's done the interior. I got a great designer who did all of the illustrations, got an amazing photographer that I work with. So yeah, I self-published it with a ton of other people.
Wonderful. Actually, I always feel like if you're ever going to be successful at anything, that you can never do it alone. You have to find the right people to join you and to just be along the path. And you never can take full credit because you're never can be successful on your own. You have to have other people either cheering you
Yeah.
on or helping you. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
mean,
you
this
go for
well,
it.
this kind of was just like, it really hit home to me the other day when I was talking to a friend of mine. And we'd talked a lot about one of the chapters, and we'd kicked it around so much. And he's a subject matter expert in mental health, and that's why, you know, we were really going for it. And then you know, the book came out, and I said, look, Alex, I just want to thank you for all of the ideas that I stole off you. And he said, oh, that's all right, Duncan, I stole them off other people anyway.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about your book. So you define the book Real Men Quit as an armchair macho guide to going beyond alcohol and building the life you want. What are some of the tough topics that you talk about in there regarding alcohol?
So it all starts off by getting to grips with your beliefs around alcohol, many of which are formed from the wonderful portrayal of alcohol in the media, you know. And because it's aimed at men, you know, I wanted to focus on things that men understand, like James Bond. And you know, it's so obvious when you actually dig into James Bond. So Daniel Craig, who played James Bond, he does drink. You know, I'm not hiding that fact. But if you look at the kind of the fitness regime he went through to get that body as he was walking out of the sea in Casino Royale, you know, and I have read the book written by his personal trainer. It's called Intelligent Fitness, and he talks a lot about horrible plyometric exercises and 5 a.m. starts, and you know, just these punishing workouts. But he doesn't recommend at any point that Daniel Craig drinks alcohol. So you've got this kind of like this guy who's performing the role. He's avoiding alcohol. He's absolutely cutting it out of his diet so he can be the best that he can be. And then what is actually James Bond a vehicle for? It's a vehicle for selling a lot of different things. I will admit they advertise more than simply alcohol, but it's just about the most famous martini drinker in the world, isn't he?
That is kind of an interesting thought. I've never really thought about that because most likely, if you're going to be dedicating that much to your health, you're not going to be drinking excessively either. But anyway, so I didn't really get a chance to read Real Men Quit, but I did read Get Over Indulgence. So, and I read quite a bit. I have not finished it. And one thing you said in there is towards the beginning, with alcohol, one time is never enough. So that was how you felt when you first started drinking. What was your first experience with alcohol and why do you think it led down the path of repeated overindulgence?
Yeah, so I, like a lot of people, you know, I started drinking when I was a teenager. It was very sociable. It was something that I thought helped me to deal with anxiety and helped me to find my place in life. And it was very much like it kind of it met some needs. I mean, that's how I thought at the time. And I was also, you know, I was very tied up with this idea of creativity. And, you know, what do creative people do? They all drink, don't they? I mean, from Hemingway to Hendrix, it's like, you know, if you want to be a proper creative person, then you just have to drink. So it kind of it seemed to fill a need for me. But as it went on, the, you know, the image that I had of alcohol started to evaporate, and the truth started to become more and more apparent.
It seemed like a turning point in your story was when you asked yourself, how's that going to help me become a father? As in, how's alcohol going to help you become a father? How did that question impact you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very lucky in as far as I met this amazing woman, and you know, she was very gentle and very understanding, very compassionate. She kind of like nudged me in the right direction and helped me to start making better choices around my life. One of the better choices was, of course, marrying her, and then we wanted to start a family, and uh, she had a miscarriage, which was, it's incredibly hard on her. And to add to that, I wasn't really there for her. When I had difficult things in my life, my coping mechanism was I will go and get some wine. And of course, I'd drink and disappear into myself. And I wasn't really there for her. So I wasn't providing her with what she needed. And sadly, it never got to one of those really moodily lit 4 a.m. moments in the mirror, because it would have made a really great scene, wouldn't it? But it kind of became this question of what do I want from life? Do I want another drink or do I want to start a family? And that's why that question resonated with me so much, why it became so important to me. It was just like, how is this drink going to help me become a father? And I think it's a really important question for people to ask around any kind of destructive behavior, around food, around cigarettes, around alcohol, around drugs. How is that going to help you to become the person you want to be?
One thing that I have found, because like I have interviewed a lot of people who've written memoirs, and the one thing that I find has that has helped people heal the most from any of their traumas, any of their addictions, is humility. And right there, you showed, that you had found that humility. You were able to recognize that you were not the person you wanted to be for your wife when she needed you. And I just really respect that. But seems to be one of the biggest things that I see that people need to find in order to find that healing. But one of the things you also pointed out in your book is that since you drank from 8 until midnight every night, you ended up realizing that in a week's time, you spent 24 hours of your life drinking. What was that realization like for you when that occurred to you?
I mean, that was huge. Like, I can genuinely get very, very boring about how amazing sobriety is, about all of the wonderful gifts that you get. But that time one, it was such a big thing for me. Because if you'd asked me, I'd have said, "Oh, I don't spend that much time drinking," because I thought, well, I'm working hard during the day, I'm getting everything done, I'm performing. There's a lot going on. I was, platinum card, high functioning alcoholic kind of thing. And so I didn't see that it was taking up very much time. I thought I was just doing it around the edges, but that was the biggest realization, that those 4 hours a day, it adds up. It adds up to an entire day, and including all of the bit that you're asleep. So yeah, when I stopped drinking, I suddenly had all of this time, and I was like, well, great, let's find a writing project. And I just went nuts. A friend of mine in publishing said you should write a blurb and write the first 2 chapters and maybe do like a chapter outline. So I wrote the blurb and I did the chapter outline, wrote the first 2 chapters. 100,000 words later, I thought, I did not take your advice, did I? No, I just wrote the entire thing and then binned half of it and wrote it again and binned half of that and wrote it again, which was all the fun of being a writer, isn't it?
So with your writing, do you have anything that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so my next book's going to be called Flat Pack Sober, and I have become of late pretty obsessed with not simply how to get people sober, but what is it that keeps them sober. That is actually kind of reflected in Real Men Quit. There's a bit of a kind of sneaky, don't tell anyone, but most of these books about stopping drinking, they tell you to stop drinking at the end. I do it like 2/3 of the way through. I'll catch him out. And then the latter third of the book is actually about what to do once you've stopped drinking. But I realize that's such a huge subject that it could fill a library or a lifetime, depending on how you look at it. But I wanted to really get into something and record a lot of the wisdom from friends of mine, people I've met through the sober sphere, other coaches, other speakers. I wanted to steal all of their ideas, basically. But actually, there's something a bit more to it than that. So it's called Flat Pack Sober because it starts with the question, how do you build IKEA flat pack furniture. So go on then, give me your answer. How would you build some IKEA flat pack furniture?
I don't know. I asked my husband, hey, here,
Well,
can you build this?
that is a pretty good idea, as I'm all about, building that team and finding people who are good at the stuff that you're not good at. But it's effectively, there's kind of one of four ways of doing it. Some people, they sit down with the instructions, they read the instructions, they're cup of tea, they're just focused on those. Some people will get all of the bits out, they'll put them over the floor and they'll check that everything's there and they'll look at it all. Some people will get a friend to help them. And some people will just tear the box open and get stuck in. And those sort of define the four learning styles. Either you're very cognitive, so you like to read and you like to process all of the information. You can be quite reflective, that you want to absorb the information, reflect on it, and then act. You can be quite dynamic, so you want to just get started, or you can be social and you want to learn with other people. So it's about kind of realizing that the way some people do their sobriety is very different to yours because they have a different approach to how they learn things and how they solve problems. So it's going to try and, offer advice in four quadrants every time. So I don't know, is that a little bit ambitious? I also want to make it a little bit like a graphic novel slash IKEA instruction manual thing. Anyway, as you can see, I'm at the start of my journey.
Well, I find that interesting how you were talking about the different ways that people would have to find their sobriety, because I never thought of it that way. And except for I did talk to somebody very recently who had their own sobriety journey, and she actually really struggled with the AA model because they do not allow, or at least there's a stigma around having an antidepressant. And she really needed that antidepressant to help her so that way she could get through her day in order to be able to stop drinking. And so she actually had to find a different program. And now she's really starting to try to build her own programs because she doesn't like that stigma of, well, what about those people who do actually need drugs in order to help them with their sobriety, whether it's from drugs or alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, AA, I've got a lot of respect for AA because it saved the lives of several of my friends. But I also recognize that it is absolutely not for everybody. And that is one of the things that you do hear about AA, about they have some kind of quite entrenched attitudes towards what counts as a drug. Coffee and nicotine, caffeine and nicotine, they don't seem too bothered about, but they do have some attitudes around other things. And that's what I think is brilliant about the sober sphere these days. There are many more people talking about it and coming at it from different points of view. And there's no longer just this kind of like, well, the only way to get sober is AA. And in all honesty, it's never been the case that the only way to get sober is AA. The majority of people that get sober, so about 45% of people that stop drinking without any form of traditional support. They don't go to rehab, they don't go to AA, they don't go to a therapist, they just stop drinking. And I think that's really powerful news that we need to get out to people that actually, some people need to go to rehab. They absolutely need a medically supervised detox, withdrawal, that kind of thing. But a lot of people, they're finding their own path and they're stopping drinking and then they're using that kind of focus, that energy that they get to discover their own way. And we call it recovery, but it's just a synonym for life, isn't it?
Very true. You also actually do some coaching. Can you just share a little bit about what you do and what you offer and where people can find you?
Yeah, so I work in what would be called cognitive realignment, which is a fancy way of saying what we do is we get to grips with your beliefs. So your beliefs dictate the amount you drink. That is not my belief. That is what the research says. It's very strongly correlated. What you believe about alcohol dictates the amount you drink. So instead of, just saying, let's stop and hope, we change those beliefs. We identify them, we examine them. And if they aren't working, we throw them away. Once you are happy and once you've changed your beliefs, you tend to not desire alcohol anymore. And if you don't desire it, then you can't be tempted by it. And then it makes sobriety a lot easier. We also do a little bit of work around the thought management piece. So that's questions, like you said, around how's that going to help me to become the person I want to be. We're very much into mantras and things like that. And then finally, the way I like to work with people is I like to work with people for a longer period of time than most people. I could get you sober in an afternoon, but staying that way often requires more than just stopping drinking. It requires looking at the reasons why you were drinking, what you were trying to run away from, what you were trying to hide from, finding new ways of dealing with stress and emotions and things like that. But also, just designing that life you want, and that's the really exciting thing for me. I usually joke with people like, right now you've got all this spare time, you're going to write a symphony. Nobody has yet, but one day I'm going to. But that's it. I mean, for me, that burst of time, burst of energy, it transformed everything. It turned me from somebody who, desperately wanted to be a writer and had a bunch of, dusty manuscripts in a drawer that he was too scared to show to anybody, to somebody who actually got up off his backside, wrote something worth reading, and then put it out in the world.
What do you think it was that allowed you to write after your sobriety, but you could not write before your sobriety, or you could not publish, I should say, before your sobriety?
Yeah, I, that that is a question that I think we could probably spend an entire podcast on. I think part of it was just, you know, courage. Basically, I, and if you'd have met me at the time, you wouldn't have believed me when I said this. I don't think I had the confidence in myself because I don't think I really knew who I was, and that has a whole knock-on thing of that. I think a lot of my work, when I read it back, it doesn't quite ring true. It doesn't sound quite right because it wasn't coming from the right place. But just on a practical level, I did not believe that I was worth publishing. And it was only when I started to realize that I was worth living a sober life, that I was worth living a life worth living, that I, you know, gained the confidence to believe that my work was actually worth putting out there in the world.
I found it interesting that you said that your writing just did not ring true prior. I know in my own journey, I did not struggle with alcohol addiction or any of that. I do a little bit with screen time addiction even now, but I found that it wasn't until I found my healing that I could really write in a way that was authentic. I think because I was not in the mind space, like I was constantly, I didn't know who I was. So how can I say what is authentic if I don't even know the one thing that I should know more than anything else?
Yeah,
So
I mean, one of my favorite phrases is "write from the scars, not from the wounds," and I think you can see that in some people, and some quite famous writers, Thomas Hardy, F. Scott Fitzgerald, they had not processed their trauma; they just wrote about it and didn't even realize how hateful a lot of what they wrote was. And they were writing from a wound that was still bleeding, whereas all of the really truly satisfying work comes from somebody who has gone through something and has healed from it and has understood it and is able then to talk about it from a point of peace and of having worked their way through that. And I mean, I think you can kind of see that through a lot of different art, but it's especially true for writers. And one of the things that we don't sort of talk about, we talk about learning the craft, but we don't necessarily talk about healing ourselves and the way we should, work on ourselves as individuals. Because, do you want to be F. Scott Fitzgerald? He was blinking miserable and he died at 44.
I know I just spoke with a woman who is a publisher, and she actually wrote a book, How to Write a Memoir. And she's a publisher, so she has published over 30 books, most of them being memoirs. And the one thing that she said that when she does her coaching with them is they have to be at a certain level of healing in order to be effective when they're writing. And that is one of the key things that she had mentioned in the podcast. But anyway, so I want to go back to just the struggling of overindulgence. What is one piece of advice you would give to somebody who's starting to recognize in themselves that they are either overindulgent in alcohol, food, drugs, screen time, or whatever?
Well, I, I, I think the first thing to realize is that having acknowledged that is an amazingly important step. You know, you I've worked with a lot of drinkers, a lot of people who are doing some terrible things to themselves, and deep down inside, they do know it, and it's bringing it from deep down inside up to at least some level of awareness. That is often half the battle. Once you've got it kind of up there and you're aware of it, then you can start to do something about it. So if you've already worked out that it's starting to be a bit of an issue, you're on the road, my friend. But, sadly, that's not the destination. Now, obviously, I work with people around alcohol, but you can come and see me if you want. If you like really bad jokes, I'm your man. But what I want more than anything else is for you to do something. Whether that's come and see me, whether that's go to AA, Smart Recovery, Recovery Dharma, any of the recovery self-help groups, whether it's go and work with a therapist, a cognitive therapist, a physical therapist, an energy therapist, whatever attracts you to that, or whether you go and work with one of the myriad of sober coaches out there. There are some that don't tell bad jokes like me, and that might be absolutely your thing. Or whether you go and find one of the great other cognitive realignment programs like 1 Year No Beer or Alan Carr's Easy Way or Annie Grace, This Naked Mind. There is so much help and support out there now. So go and find what feels right for you. Get stuck in, give it your best shot. Don't be afraid. You don't have to get it right straight away, but you do have to get started. It's almost like it doesn't matter what you do. If you do something, you have at least started. And so long as you keep doing something, you will end up there. It's like writing a book, isn't it? It's like the idea in your head is no good at all. You've just got to put some words on a page, and then you've got to put some more words on a page, and then some more words, and then some more words. And before you know it, you've written 100,000 words.
So, what about loved ones? What is something that your loved ones were able to do to help you and support you as you were when you decided to become sober?
Yeah, so the, the love and support of the people around you is absolutely massive. It's so important. The fancy pants term for it is recovery capital, and I'm very lucky that I had a lot of recovery capital, and that made it easier for me to get sober because I had a wife who was very loving and supporting. I had a family, I had friends, I had a job which I hated, but it still paid the bills. And I had a passion. I don't know whether it comes across, but I quite like writing and I quite like helping people, and I quite like sobriety. So I had stuff to do with my life. I could see a way forward. But in terms of what people loved ones should do, I hate answering this question because I always end up slating my mum. Well, and my mum, I love her and everything, but she would always give me a hard time about drinking, about smoking. And that would always make me afraid and it would make me unhappy. And one thing that I reliably did when I was afraid and unhappy was drink and smoke. So I think you've got to kind of take a bit of a step back. I know I get it. I mean, I understand why you want to tell that person why what they're doing is killing them and it's, ruining relationships because it is. I really do understand that. And I know that you come from a place of love, but it doesn't feel like that when you're on the inside. It feels like you're being attacked. And when you're being attacked, you just drink. So it's sort of part of the trick is to not get in the way and not make things worse. And it is about being gentle and it is about being loving and it is about being understanding. The other thing that I always recommend people to do is, get a bit of knowledge, start to understand it a little bit more. And there are so many great ways that you can do that. There are a ton of books out there catering to all tastes and styles about sobriety, about food, about smoking. There's a ton of stuff on the internet. And there are groups out there that will help you as well. But I think one of the most powerful things is now you can go onto Instagram, you can go onto Facebook, and you can see a lot of people who are living a sober life and they're living it out loud, and they're showing you that there is a different example. And I think if you can help the person you love to see that there are people now who are have changed their lives, it helps them to understand that change is possible. And if they're a man, what do they like? They like sports. So tell them about Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton doesn't drink anymore because he knows it's incompatible with sporting success. Neither does Tom Brady. Neither does Novak Djokovic. Neither does Cristiano Ronaldo. So almost whatever sport they're into, there are great examples of people who aren't drinking to improve their lives. There are other people like Ronnie O'Sullivan, the snooker player, who came back from some pretty serious addictions. Tony Adams, the football player, came back. And there are many NFL stars out there as well. So find somebody who's done what you'd like that loved one to do, that they'll respect, and buy them the autobiography. Sign them up to the Twitter account. Show them that there is another way.
I think that one of the things that so when I was talking with a friend and she felt like she was getting a lot of judgment from other people. And the thing is I felt like I was saying a lot of the same things that everyone else was saying, but she did not feel that judgment from me. And I think when you look at the person and realize that why they're doing it is not because they're trying to be a bad person, they're trying to do something that's wrong. They're doing it because it comes from a place of pain. And if you listen to that pain first, and then you're like, but if you continue down this path, you're going to be hurting your children. You're going to be hurting. And then if you add that after listening to them and just letting them say why they're doing it rather than just stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think, that strikes me like a little bit like a coaching approach, that you're helping them to talk through and think through their problems and helping them to understand the effect of their problems, rather than just saying, this is killing you, this is going to ruin your relationships, you will lose your job if you carry on this way. You're actually trying to get behind it and understand it. And ultimately, it is always maladaptive coping mechanism. It is always an attempt to run away from something. Like I say, across many people, I notice we are all trying to run away from something. That is why we drink, take drugs, eat junk. Why we doom scroll Facebook. That's why we get into these behaviors, because we believe it helps us to escape from them. It of course doesn't, because it is in and of itself, it's a trap. So you don't run away from your problems, you just end up running around them. And but I did that for 20 years. It's pretty tiring.
I like that expression, that it causes you to run around them rather than run away from them. I like that. So this is a very important message that you're presenting to a lot of people. As far as like marketing your book, what are some of the things that you have done to market your book?
Oh, so I do a lot of podcasts. I love podcasts. They yeah, I mean, I like talking, but I think getting the message out there, getting the ideas across is almost as important, because at the end of the day, I want these ideas in people's heads. I'm not that bothered about hitting the New York Times bestseller list. I just want people to get the joy that I have got. So it is, as much as anything else, getting the message out there. So yes, we do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of guest posting because I'm a writer. Ergo, I should be able to do a guest post, shouldn't I? We do a lot on social media. What I did with Real Men Quit, and I was like almost surprised. I spent 18 months with my head in this manuscript, just like totally focused on it. And then when I finished it, we were looking at what we were going to do around social media. So I went through and I thought, how much of it can I actually take out and use as articles and quotes and, use as collateral to put on social media? And it's like, wow, a lot of this actually stands alone. So I was able to take out quite a lot of articles. We'd also recorded the audio version, and we recorded a video online course that went with it. So we had all of that collateral. I worked really, really hard on testimonials to get people who shouldn't really give me testimonials. I just keep bugging them until they do. So I'm very proud of the fact that Aaron, who is a Paralympic gold medalist in wheelchair rugby, he gave me a testimonial. James, who's a veteran of the Special Air Service, which is the British Special Forces, got an international rugby player, mountain climber, all of those kind of things. And it was about how do we really leverage that? How do we not just stick it on a nice thing and put it on social media, but how do we get them to record videos and use those on the social media as well? So yeah, just it's anything. You've just got to keep working as hard as you can at it, and eventually it comes good, hopefully. Although from my point of view, one of the most effective things that I found is giving my book away, because my book is sort of a coaching program and I am a coach. And what I have found is that I haven't saved the best bits. I haven't hidden the good stuff. I have put all of the best stuff into the book, but everybody is slightly different, and everybody requires a little tweak and a little explanation so that they can understand it exactly from where they're coming from. So for me, if I give you the book, you read the book, you're far more likely to come back and do one of my coaching programs. So it makes a lot of sense for me to give the book away to, obviously, the right kind of people. I don't just stand on the street corner handing it out. That would be ridiculous.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. But there is a question I ask everybody who's been on Authors Alcove, and that is, what is one piece of advice you would give to a not yet published author, especially somebody who has written a memoir like you?
Oh, well, if they've already written it, yeah. Well,
wants to write.
Oh, okay. If you haven't written anything, the best piece of advice I ever got was write the blurb first. So I do that religiously now. And I am pleased to say that on the back of this book is, largely speaking, the words that I wrote 2 years ago about it. I brushed them up a little bit, made it kind of a bit more salesy. But by doing that, you actually end up writing the book that you set out to write. I kind of have added to that I'm very focused on who I'm writing for. So I haven't such a clear idea. I laminated my idea and it sits at the front of my writing book. And every time I sit down to write anything, I read my little statement about who I am actually writing for, so that I know, who I expect to read it. And that makes life so much easier, because when I'm wondering whether a joke works or not, I'm just thinking, well, actually, will they find it funny? Not is it funny, will they find it funny? And that's really helped me to kind of cut through a lot of clutter and get rid of a lot of stuff, because it's like, I think it's hilarious, but actually, will my reader find it funny?
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Duncan. I really do appreciate it. I also want to thank my listeners. If you want to read either of his books, you can find them in the show notes, as well as a link to his website and his coaching program. If you like this episode, you might also enjoy my interview with James Francis, where he talks about overcoming addictions and healing from trauma. Again, today I talked to Duncan Bhaskaran Brown and he has published 2 books, Real Men Quit and Get Over Overindulgence. If you want to purchase either of these, like I said, they're in the show notes, and his website is bhaskaranbrown.com. Again, thank you so much, Duncan. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I really enjoy talking about writing, nearly as much as I enjoy writing.
Thank you for joining us at Authors Alcove, the Healing Place. We hope today's episode has touched your heart and offered you insights and inspiration for your own healing journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And remember, with noadays.com, you can take such courses as how to become a freelance writer, as well as how to become a proofreader and editor. Again, I am greatly appreciative of all those that support me through Patreon. Thank you so much. Please go there and show me some love. You can find both of these links in our show notes. You can also listen to our sister podcasts, Authors Alcove, The Writing Corner, where we talk everything about writing, publishing, and marketing, as well as Authors Alcove, The Reading Nook, where we talk about my favorite genres, fantasy, sci-fi, and the occasional horror. Until next time, keep healing, keep growing, and we'll meet again in the healing place.